So you can get started seated or lying down or child's pose. You can choose which one you want, whatever feels the most nourishing. And for today's practice, we're going to focus on actually a Chinese medicine kind of perspective. So we're going to talk about the wood element, and we'll be kind of tapping into some of the meridians that are a part of the wood element, but we won't necessarily talk about those so much. If you have questions about that or want to talk about that later after class, we can. But what we're going to focus on is more so one of like the aspects of the wood element or one of the qualities, and that's the idea that it introduces like this sense of sort of easygoing and free-flowing like attitude towards things, I guess. So, in the way that we're gonna use that in this yin practice tonight is that some of the postures are going to be a little bit more challenging. So they're gonna target some tissues that might have a bit of discomfort that comes up. And the idea is to try to like sort of soften and lean into the discomfort instead of like maybe pushing really hard through it or trying to force yourself into a pose. Can you kind of feel the sensations of the challenge and then soften around the edges of it? It's not going to be super hard or anything. It's still a yin practice and we're still going to be aiming for that 60%. It's just some of the tissues we're going to work with sometimes can invite a little bit of discomfort. So we'll just try to kind of ease into those and have an attitude of like kind of easygoing and taking what's coming within the postures. So with that in mind, we're just going to take a couple moments here to come into awareness of our breath. So again, you can be in child's pose or seated or lying down. Anything that feels good to you. And I invite you to close or soften the eyes. Take a couple moments here to notice what parts of your body are in contact with the ground beneath you. So that might be your sit bones, your legs. If you're lying down, you might notice the whole back body. And then maybe bring some attention to the temperature in the room, how that feels on your skin. The textures of the clothes that you're wearing. Just noticing your presence in this moment. And then allow that presence to move a little bit more inward to notice the rhythms of your breath in your body. Notice as you bring attention to the breath, there might be this feeling to want to change it or judge it. Sometimes we think maybe I'm not breathing deep enough, slow enough. But see if you can let go of that and just welcome however your body is showing up here today. Know that it's a natural tendency to want to change things when we bring awareness to them. So if that happened for you, just operate with a little bit of kindness towards yourself. And then see if you can observe the breath a little bit more. And we'll just take about 3 more rounds of breath wherever you are. If you'd like to, you can invite in a fuller, deeper breath if that feels good. Or just keep breathing naturally with ease here. And if the eyes are closed, you can go ahead and blink them open, and we'll go into our first posture. You might want to have a folded blanket nearby. We're going to come into deer pose, and if you practiced with us last week, we did a softer version of this where we used a bolster. This is going to be a little bit more of an active version. So to come into this pose, you'll take your right leg, and you want it to be at a 90-degree bend so that your right shin is parallel with the short edge of your mat. And then your back leg, your left leg, you want that also at somewhere around a 90-degree bend so that your shin is parallel with the long edge of your mat. And then you'll take your chest and turn it over towards your right shin. And take a pause here just to notice and settle in. It's kind of an awkward pose. Both of your sit bones probably won't be grounded down into the mat, but that's okay. And then if you've got a lot of space between your right knee and the ground, you can take a blanket and put it underneath there, just so that you have something to lean into. For a moment, notice what it feels like to press both feet down into the mat as you sit the spine up really tall. So pressing the edges of the feet. See what it feels like to press the knees, or if the knees aren't touching the ground, you're still kind of aiming for that grounding sensation so that the legs start to feel really active here. And then let that feeling go. Keep this sensation of a tall spine as you start to lean forward over your front shin. So you probably start to feel a stretch on the right outer hip, the external rotators here. Aim for about 60%. And then this back leg, now that we're in the posture, it doesn't have to stay at that 90-degree position. You can bend up through the knee a little bit more if you'd like. And then if you are feeling any tenderness in either of the knees, you can walk both feet in a little bit closer to the midline. It doesn't have to be 90 degrees. So start to settle yourself into this one. Noticing the sensations that might be coming up in the right hip. And see if you can remove a sense of rigidity from the posture. And try to come into it with ease and softness. Notice if you are clenching or holding on to anything in the right foot or the right ankle. You invite in a sense of release here. Allowing the right hip to get a little bit heavier on the mat. Noticing how when you stay, you can soften in a little bit more. And then we're just here for about 3 more rounds of breath. Noticing if you're resisting still. Inviting in some more ease. And then slowly and mindfully begin to support yourself to come up to an upright spine. And then you just turn to the long edge of your mat and you can windshield wiper the knees side to side. Noticing the sense of blood flow back into the right hip. The tissues hydrating. And then you can take a pause in stillness too, if that helps invite in a little bit more awareness. In our next pose, we're not going to come to the other side of that one just yet, so we're going to stay on balance for a moment. We're going to come into Upavishta Konasana, or a wide leg forward fold. So it might be useful to sit up on top of a folded blanket so that your pelvis can tip forward a little bit more to come into this one. Now your legs can be at whatever width feels comfortable and useful to you. And then from here, allow that sense of the pelvis to tip forward. So you can kind of rock forward and back until you feel that kind of catch and go forward. And then you can walk your hands out a little bit further in front of you from there with the pelvis tipping forward. And if it feels good or useful to you, you can also start to round the spine and let the head hang down. So the chin starts to tuck, and you can feel maybe a little tug in the tissues on the back side of the body along with the legs. This one's one that comes up with a lot of resistance for me. It can be really challenging for me to not want to approach it with trying to push through the challenges. So as I'm telling you and reminding you to approach the posture with some softness, I'm also reminding myself. Notice if you can loosen the ankles here and the feet. And then if you can allow that to drift up the legs as well. That sense of softness. Bring some awareness to your jaw. And see if you can create a little bit of space between your top and bottom teeth so that your jaw can relax. And you're about halfway there. We'll be here for about 4 more full rounds of breath. And see if you can use the breath as a tool to help you find a little bit more ease in the posture. And then as you're ready, slowly start to walk the hands back in so that you can support yourself into an upright spine. You can remove the prop from underneath your hips if you've got one there. And then option to kind of just hang out with your legs stretched out. You can shake out the legs if you'd like to. Noticing any changes, maybe in the temperature or the texture of the tissues. And then we'll come into deer pose on the other side. So this time your left leg, I'm kind of just turned around the other way, but my left leg is parallel with the short edge of the mat, or left shin, sorry, parallel with the short edge of the mat, so that I have about a 90-degree bend in the leg, and then the back leg, the shin is parallel with the long edge of the mat. Again, we'll take a couple breaths here. Grab your blanket if you need it, support underneath your front knee if your knee isn't touching the ground, just so you've got something to lean into. And then feel the sensation of the edges of your feet pressing down into the mat so that the legs get a little bit more active. Let the spine get really tall here. And then feel the sensation of both knees pressing down into the mat or the prop beneath you. Notice what it feels like to get active in the legs here before we move on. And then keep this sense of length in the spine as you let go of that pressing down with the legs and start to walk yourself forward so that you can fold over your front shin. Trying to find that sense of 60% here. And then take a moment to notice too that this leg may feel really different from the other one. Maybe you don't have quite as much space or range of motion. That's okay. And then notice if you can find a way to relax a little bit more into the posture. See if there's a sense of clenching or gripping in the left leg. And you can use the breath to invite in a little bit more softness. Trying to soften the areas that feel rigid. Can you allow the sides of the neck to relax a little bit more? And then we're here for just about 3 more rounds of breath. Mindfully start to support yourself to come back up to an upright spine. And then again, you can turn to the side and kind of windshield wiper the knees side to side, or come into stillness if that's more useful. Sometimes some movement's kind of nice just to feel hydration and blood flow coming back into the tissues. And then for this next one, grab a blanket and I'm going to fold it up to make kind of a longer, skinnier sort of pillow. You might find it useful in a moment. We won't use it right away, but have it nearby, near your head. And then we'll come to lie down on your right side. And your knees can be bent here. I've got my right forearm on the mat supporting me. And then let your right rib cage and right waist get kind of heavy so that it feels like almost this rounding and hammocking position. And then allow your right ear to drop towards your right shoulder so it can rest there. This is just step 1 of the pose so that you can feel this opening and sensation from your right armpit all the way down to your right hip. May not be that big, that's okay. And if that's uncomfortable in any way, you can come down a little bit lower, rest your head in your hand. Just trying to feel a little bit of extension in the right side body. And then if you'd like to keep going from here, you can take your left leg, your top leg, and bring it out in front of you. It can be straight or bent. It's just kind of going to act like a little kickstand. You also might start to feel a stretch on the left outer hip, and then take your left hand and reach for the top of your right foot if you can. If you can't reach for it, or if you can reach for it but it's just too much straining, you can just simply take your left hand behind your back and bend up through the right knee. So we're kind of in this twisted up position here. Now see if you are holding on to the top of the right foot with the left hand, notice that, like I said, you can still relax into the posture. So there might be a lot going on here. You might be feeling a stretch in the right quad, top of the right thigh. You might be feeling a sensation or stretch on the outside of the left hip, the left leg, depending on the position of it. Then you might also be still feeling that stretch on the right side body. So there's a lot happening here. But notice if there's areas of your body that are feeling the need to resist. Make sure you're finding that 60% version so that you can soften in. Now for this next part, you're just going to have to release the right foot momentarily so that you can come to lie down on your side. You'll take the right arm out in front of you. This is where it can be nice to have this pillow underneath your head. And then again, you can reach for the top of the right foot and then start to peel your left shoulder open a little bit more so this turns into a twist. Again, your left leg can be anywhere. It can be bent, it can be straight out in front of you. And then your left shoulder blade, your left scapula, does not need to be touching the mat behind you. In fact, mine won't, so I'm gonna take my blanket, this nice long blanket, and kind of move it at a diagonal so that I can rest my head on it and my shoulder blade at the same time, so I've got something to lean into. And then again, notice that you can find a version that you can relax into. And if none of that's working for you, you can simply come to a supine twist here. Notice if you're pushing or clenching or gripping in any way. And invite in a bit more ease. See if you can soften like 1 or 2% more anywhere in the body. And we're just here for about 3 more rounds of breath. Giving yourself some time to really melt into the pose. Now, gently and mindfully release the bottom foot if you're holding on to it. And then you can remove the pillow from behind your head and come to lie on your back for a moment. Soles of the feet press into the mat, and then you can walk them a little bit wider, like about mat's distance apart, and allow the knees to knock in towards each other in a constructive rest pose. And then give yourself a couple breaths here to notice how your body's responding to the postures. How your mind is responding. And then we'll come into the same thing on the other side. I'm just going to turn to go to the other edge of the other side of the mat, but you can stay where you are. I'll take my pillow with me. So this time we'll come to lie down on the left side, both knees bent to begin with. And then again, you can prop yourself up on your forearm, or if that doesn't work for you, you can come all the way down so that your head can rest in your hand. But we're trying to create this sense of a hammocking in the side body. So see if you can start to feel a gentle stretch from the left armpit all the way down to the left hip, and then you can rest your left ear on your left shoulder. Just take a couple breaths here. Eyes can be closed or gaze can be soft. Notice already how you're showing up for this pose kind of with the idea in mind of where this is going. And if there were any parts that were uncomfortable, see if you can let go of any preconceived ideas and just ease into what's about to come. So we'll start to take our right leg, the top leg, out in front. Again, leg can be bent or straight. And then take your right arm and you can reach for the top of your left foot. So I'm reaching for my bottom foot here with my top arm. And then again, see if this is something that you can hold while still being able to find some ease in it. You can start to draw the left leg kind of back a little bit more if you're not feeling a stretch in the quad. So you start to play with the angles and the positioning here, you'll notice that the stretch starts to show up in different ways. So again, you might be noticing it in the tissues in the left side body, rib cage. Depending on the positioning of your right leg, you might feel it in your right outer hip or all the way up the right leg. Some sensation in the left quad for sure for me. And then if you've held on to that bottom foot, just release it momentarily so that we can come to lie down again, extending your left arm out in front of you. Grab that pillow if you used it last time. And then again, you can start to reach for the bottom foot and begin to peel your right shoulder open so that you're coming a bit more into a twist. I'm gonna take that blanket at a diagonal again so that my head can be on it, and then also my right scapula has something to land and rest into in the twist. And then once you've set yourself up well, make sure you take the time to do so. Allow yourself to just drop into this. See if you can melt in a little bit more this time. Notice if you are holding any tension around the forehead, the eyebrows. Can you invite these areas to relax a little bit more? And then notice how inviting in some softness to these small areas can change the pose as a whole. And then we're here for just 3 more rounds of breath. See if you can allow yourself to really drop in for these last few moments. Begin by gently releasing the bottom foot if you're holding on to it. And then start to roll onto your back again, removing the prop from beneath your head. Laying your head back down on the mat, allowing the spine to neutralize for a moment. And then you can walk the soles of the feet out to the edges of the mat. Knees are bent up towards the ceiling. And then allow the knees to knock in towards each other for a moment or two here. Might be noticing some more balance in the two sides. Some awareness around the impact the pose had on the tissues. And then we'll stay on our backs for this next one. So take your legs out long, like you're coming into Shavasana. And then you'll start to walk just your legs to begin with over towards the left bottom corner of your mat. So over towards the left, and then you can take your right ankle on top of your left. That'll make the stretch a little bit bigger. And then you could take the arms overhead and start to walk them over towards the top left corner of your mat. And then just give yourself a couple moments here to find kind of your 60%. This one for me has a tendency to feel pretty minimal to begin with, but then as I stay in it, I can really start to feel the tension and tug on the tissues in the side body. You can bend through the elbows if that feels a little bit more comfortable. Or grab your right wrist with your left hand. But see if you can allow your hips to feel really heavy here. Both shoulder blades heavy on the mat.
maybe you're feeling a stretch from your right ankle all the way up towards your right armpit. Notice if you're still holding or clenching anywhere in the tissues. Try to soften the edges there. And then we're just here for 3 more rounds of breath. Slowly start to come back to center by walking your upper body back to the middle first, arms down by the sides, and then the legs can start to come back to center too, pausing for a mini shavasana here. Noticing any differences here, left side to right side. For me, my right side always feels a lot longer, almost more connected. And then we'll just move into supine moon on the other side. So start to walk your feet over towards the right bottom corner of your mat. Option to cross the left ankle over the right. And then start to walk the upper body over towards the right top corner of the mat. Again, arms, doesn't really matter what you do with them here. You could take them overhead and bend through the elbows. They can be down by your sides. You can grab the left wrist gently with the right hand. And just allow your hips to feel really heavy here. Noticing a gentle tug through the left side waist. And then maybe your awareness moves from there down towards your left ankle, and then all the way up towards your left armpit. Feeling a big side body stretch. Notice if you can melt and soften the shoulder blades a little bit more into the mat. And then scan through the body and see if there's anywhere that you're still gripping and holding on. And can you just invite like 1 or 2% more softness to those areas? We're here for about 3 more rounds of breath. And gently begin to release the arms, walking the shoulders back to center, the upper body back to center. And then unhook the left ankle from the right and walk the legs back to center, taking the arms down by your side. Resting in a mini Shavasana for just a moment. Maybe feeling a sense of a little bit more balance in the body. And then if you've got your blanket nearby, you're going to grab that and then bend up through the knees so that the soles of your feet are pressing into the mat. Press down through both feet just to lift the hips enough to slide your blanket underneath your sacrum. And then you can pause here in this supported bridge pose. Or you can start to pick up one foot at a time so that your knees are over the hips, a little bit more over the torso, and then maybe if you'd like to, you can extend the legs so that the soles of the feet start to go up towards the ceiling. Knees don't have to be, your knees can be bent. And then see if you can allow the thighs to start to rest in towards each other if your legs are extended. Just here for a few breaths. And if your legs are extended, slowly start to bend through the knees, placing one foot down at a time, soles of the feet back to the mat, and then press into both feet to lift up the hips and slide the blanket out to the side. We're headed for Shavasana, so grab whatever cushions or blankets or anything you might want to keep yourself comfortable. I'm going to do my usual little trick of a little roll for my cervical spine. And then I leave the blanket, the tail out long so I have something to rest my head on. I'm going to grab my bolster for behind my knees. And then one more blanket to go over the top of me. And then once you've situated yourself, excuse me, with your props, take a couple moments here just to feel the body land. And check in with yourself. And notice if you were able to cultivate a little bit of that free-flowing kind of movement with ease, attributes of the wood element that we talked about at the beginning. Were you able to let go of some rigidity? Does your body have a little bit more softness in it? And it's okay if it doesn't. But see if in these last few moments in Shavasana, if you can allow yourself to drop in a little bit more. Allowing the muscles to get heavy so they drape off the bones. Forehead soft, neck relaxed. And start to bring some awareness back into the body. In the same way we started class, noticing your breath. Feeling the body breathing. And then maybe start to wake yourself up a little bit more by wiggling through the fingers and the toes, inviting in some gentle movement. And if it feels good to you, you can reach the arms overhead, taking a nice big full body stretch. Slowly rolling off to one side, resting your head on your arm with the knees bent. Just taking a pause here. Noticing the quality of softness and stillness you've cultivated. And then if you can, keep the eyes closed as you press the top arm into the ground to bring you up to a seat. Or maybe you have a soft gaze. And then if it's meaningful to you, you can bring your hands to heart center. Pausing here in gratitude for showing up. Thank you for your presence and your practice.